How you doing, everybody? Justin, business. How you doing, man? What's up, everybody? Good to see you. I'm back after 10 days. Business, you're always invited, or anybody else who wants to come on that wants to have a fun time. We're gonna wait a couple of seconds just to have people come in. Pearl, how you doing, man? Daniel, Walter, how are you, everybody?
10
Miles.
days of no talking?
No talking, man. It's wonderful. Lulu J. Now there's gonna be so much talking.
Yeah, you're ready to spill the beans tonight.
Yeah, I'm gonna try and actually I'm gonna practice some you know some measures of containing myself. Let's see if I can see if I can hold it. I'm gonna try and keep it relatively short today, maybe an hour, maybe an hour and a half. Welcome, everybody. I look like Jesus. Thank you. I guess I'll take it as a compliment. Um, so yeah, so I'm to all the regulars. You guys know that I've been gone for 10 days. I was doing a silent meditation retreat. To all the newcomers, my name is Danny Goller, and I claim to have found proof that we live in a simulation. What's up, Cal, Tina, and Jose? And I'm Steve. And I am. We're meeting here daily. We're reconvening our daily routine and discussing all kinds of topics from philosophy, science, religion, spirituality. And thank you so much, Cal. And then we'll see what insights we can share today. Thank you for the likes, guys. Definitely the retreat, the silent retreat. Hello to everybody on YouTube, and definitely have some insights. Every time I go to one of these, I get obviously insights. It is interesting what your mind does when you don't talk at all. The layers of confusion start chatting, and it becomes so obvious how much nonsense we're carrying every day. And it's one thing when you hear that, as kind of like a quip on social media, but it's quite another to experience it directly. So welcome, everybody. And I kind of jumped into there. I had a full day of meetings today that I was catching up on, so I didn't really have time to put too much thought into exactly what we're going to be talking about today. But I figured I'm just going to dive into it, and we'll see if we have any interesting subjects that emerge just from being here. So welcome, everybody. Where did you do the retreat? It was in North Fork. Hey, how are you? What's up, MEF? Biggest insight at the retreat. There's many. They are, I think, the two main ones. The two main insights are more personal, which I don't mind sharing, but I don't know how interesting they will be because I think they're highly specific to my personality. But I guess I can try and generalize them. The retreat was in North Fork, which is right under Yosemite Park in California. It's about 4.5 hours away drive from me. Um, would you love? Yeah, you can. Anybody who wants to sign up, by the way, these retreats are free. If you Google Vipassana, Vipassana, and just type in where you live, it will show you the closest location. They're free. All you got to do is sign up and show up. I always recommend that if you're serious about going, you should just sign up, and you can always cancel last second. It's always better to be there, kind of signed up, versus thinking about it, because uh, because that way you have a certain amount of seriousness behind it. It's donation based only, so in the end of the retreat, if you want to donate something, you're always welcome to, but nobody's going to hold you to it. Great facilities, good food, and essentially for 10 days, all you do is meditate, and they obviously show you how, and you don't talk to anybody. New York State, yeah. I actually hear the East Coast has pretty good ones. California has 3 centers, but they're all over the world, and they're all free. Hey, Ava, how are you? So, biggest insights from the retreat. Um, I think this time the biggest one for me was there's always 2 days for me specifically from the 10 days that are very difficult. because there's like an arc to the experience. By the way, the business, if you want to say something, you always feel free to jump in. Don't worry about cutting me off or something like that. um and yeah, so I to anybody who doesn't know, Vipassana is essentially the closest uh, framework of meditation to how the Buddha taught it. In fact, Vipassana literally just means observation, and it's just basically seeing things for what they are, which is a loaded concept, I guess. But there is a way that's what the Buddha discovered specifically to do a way to do that, and the types of focused introspections, I guess you could call them, before it was meditation, existed. But what the Buddha discovered is that there's a particular way to do it in which it's aimed towards walking towards the final goal, which is full enlightenment, essentially. And to some of us, these ideas are more tangible than others. For some people, it maybe is a philosophical idea, and maybe they don't really think about it too much of what true enlightenment would be. And actually, that might be an interesting subject to explore. What is true enlightenment? Today, we have a lot of different ideas about it because people talk about it on social media all the time. Just like with most things, I doubt that most people truly understand what that means. I'm not saying I do. It just feels to me that, practicing a little bit. I've been doing. This was what I keep trying to calculate. I think it was either the seventh or the eighth time that I went, and every time it's a little bit different. But there's a pattern that emerges. It's one thing to believe all the kinds of topics that we discuss here sometimes, which are the chakras and energies and beings from other dimensions and all that stuff, and actually practicing like a daily routine. In a Vipassana retreat, you have 11 or 12 hours available to you of pure meditation daily, and they obviously show you the technique. The technique is extremely simple. All you do, well, it's simple but difficult. All you do is that you basically scan your body from head to toe in a structured way. You prepare your mind for 3 days, in which you just do only a form of meditation called Anapana, in which you're just paying attention to your breath. And then after you're ready and you have enough of a focus, then you start scanning your body from head to toe. And you don't talk to anyone. Ooh, that cut my lip. It's not that you just don't talk. It's called noble silence, which means that you also don't communicate in any shape or form with anyone. So there's obviously other people. There's about 100 participants in this one, but male and female segregated. But when you, for example, in the dining hall, there's no like gesturing. Can you pass the salt or something like that? You with your head down, you essentially live like a monk for 10 days. And I highly recommend this experience to anyone. If you're into meditation, not into meditation, doesn't matter. Uh, if nothing else, you come out with extreme clarity about many things about yourself, about your life, because you get to spend it in your own body and really paying attention to what's going on inside of you. And the reason the practice is difficult is because, well, same reason that all meditation is difficult, like true meditation, because paying attention is difficult, and it's something that humans are notoriously terrible at, right? If I tell you to just focus on your finger for 1 minute, even if I put a gun to your head, you can't do it. Like you might think you can't, like without thinking about anything, right? And it takes a lot of practice to be able to do that. But what's pure about the particular form of Vipassana, which is without all the metaphysics added, is that essentially the Buddha discovered that as long as you do this scan, as long as you pay attention to your body and you just keep doing that, certain patterns of internal behavior will emerge. And if you learn how to ride the snipe's edge, in which you're not really trying to push away unpleasant experiences in your body, or emotional experiences, which essentially are just another expression in the body, or latch on to the ones that are super enjoyable. In other words, if you learn how to not have a aversion to unpleasant things and craving of pleasant things, then you can reach a place where all of a sudden you get into a neutral point, and from that point, that is the actual discovery of the Buddha. that's what he added to the picture, essentially, is that from that place, somehow the mind starts purifying itself. So it's almost, and I don't mean metaphorically, like straight up. Like basically what happens is you can visualize in any way you want, because what is actually happening, we don't really know. But essentially what's happening is that, why did it say on offline? Weird. What's actually happening is that the second you reach this neutral state, all the stuff that we accumulate in our bodies throughout our lives starts almost like expressing themselves and disappearing. So if you go to work and you get tense, the tension is in your shoulders, right? Everybody knows that. You need a back rub, right? We all know that. We don't really think about it too much, but we essentially, that's a physical representation of a mental event. In the Western world, we tend to only hyper focus on the mental, and not even realize that the physical exists. In the East, there's a slightly different relationship to this stuff, but that's essentially how it goes. And then if you have some kind of an event that you don't really want to think about, you got into it with your partner, or you had some kind of a quarrel with somebody at work, it's unpleasant, but then you go home, you watch some TV, you watch some YouTube, you go to a movie, you have good sex, whatever it is, you forget about it. So you essentially, as long as you take your attention off the mental aspect of it, you think, okay, I'm out of it, right? The thing is that in order for the energy to fully express itself, it has to pass through your conscious awareness. Again, don't ask me the specifics of it right now, because I think it can get pretty complicated. But sorry, baby. Oh, you need help to move this? Okay. So essentially, if you take your mind away from the mental, you think you solved it, but the physical stuff actually stays in the body, just like we know that the tension in the shoulders stay. So according to Vipassana, or let's just make it simpler. According to the Buddha, essentially what happens is that all things are like that. So even the deepest traumas that we completely suppressed and forgot about, they are somewhere still in the body, didn't fully express themselves. They just kind of stay there somewhere, and they live there. And then they manifest themselves in different forms, as a sickness, as a disease. Over time, they become like a chronic pain of some sort, migraines, whatever it is. And it doesn't even matter which event caused what kind of pain. That actually doesn't matter at all. What matters is that it's now in the body, and it somehow needs to come out. The only way it can come out is that you have to bring it back into your conscious attention. So the way to do that is you first stay there. Yeah, stagnant chi is great, actually. Thank you, Biggie Deluxe, but this is actually Buddha's insight. So I'm just sharing. It would be great if I came up with Buddha's insights. But essentially, if you just sit there and you do this practice where you just scan your body, eventually, after a few days, it takes a little bit of doing, because at first it takes a little bit of doing to realize when you're not tricking yourself to think that you're actually doing the practice, versus actually sitting there and just thinking. And then in the end of the hour, it's like, oh, I meditated. No, you haven't meditated. You just thought about things. So it actually takes a second to even stop tricking yourself. But the second you can do that, and you truly have conscious attention on the body back and forth, first of all the fluff comes out. So and the reason that's true is because the fluff is obviously more light, and it expresses itself as little itches, and like something bugs you. Sometimes you feel like literally like ants crawl on your skin somewhere, and sometimes you're convinced it's like a real bug. It's kind of freaky. And what's interesting is that at the first few days, you kind of you can't stop touching yourself and moving and all that stuff. Within 2-3 days, it's gone, doesn't exist. So like you never get an itch. It's crazy, which tells you that all the fluff kind of expressed itself. So I guess you can equate the fluff to small things. Somebody cut you off in traffic, you got upset, you forgot about it. That's one of these things, right? But then when these express themselves, the next layer comes up. First, you get a layer of like pleasant sensations in the body, and then all of a sudden, whoop, like this next step comes in. And then this next step is, I guess, a little bit more, heavier. So now it's like certain aches that you're convinced that just like chronicles, oh, I have a back pain, I have this, I have a knee pain, I have all of that stuff. That too eventually goes away. And either in tandem with it or after, you have the heavier pains, like the deeper traumas. And it doesn't even mean that in the first 10 days you're going to feel the deepest traumas, but you definitely experience some. I can tell you one event that happened to me in the first retreat I've ever done that convinced me that this is a real science and it's not just like a feel good kind of practice of just kind of relaxing. I was sitting, I think it was on the fourth day when they teach you actual Vipassana for the first time. And then they teach you something called the Adetan, which means strong determination sitting. And strong determination sitting is exactly what it sounds like. It's basically they ask you to try for the whole hour, find a position, and not move at all. Just sit. Now, don't torture yourself. Obviously, if you feel like you're going to explode, move a little, that's fine. But see how long you can sit completely still, completely. And that's, you slowly practice how to do that. And I remember the first time I came with this like very, classical Russian attitude, like very militant, like, we're going to do this, we're going to succeed. And there was no nonsense attitude. And I woke up every day, they wake you up at 4 a.m. every day and you start meditating at 4:30. And then you released at about 9:30. So it's quite a bit of work every day. And you don't have to go to all the hours. They only ask you to actually show up for like 3 hours of the day. But I obviously always recommend if you go, you're already there, so do as much as you possibly can. So anyways, the first time I kind of did it all. Like came to all the sits, came every morning at 4:30 in the morning, did all of that stuff. And then when they gave out a ton, I sat for that hour. And because I had this like very militant attitude, I managed to muscle through the moments where I really wanted to move. I don't even know if it's the healthiest way to go about it mentally, but that's how I did it. And I just kind of sat there and didn't move a muscle. And because now I was on this high of success, and it was like, I'm like, holy shit, I sat for an hour without moving a finger, nothing. And I was like, okay, we're just going to keep sitting. So I didn't go. There was a break, and I didn't go for the break. And then everybody came back to the hall, and I was still sitting. And then we finished another hour, and I still sat there. So anyways, I sat for 4 hours straight, didn't move at all. Then I went for dinner break, like the tea break, whatever they have. During this 4 hours, well, aside from the fact that I've experienced a lot of crazy, like ups and downs, all that stuff, you reach a stage that they call Bunga, that it's basically essentially where just like a free flow of energy. Like imagine like kind of like the tingling that you feel after your arm falls asleep, only pleasant, and just like all over the body, right? Your whole body is just dissolved, kind of. And when you reach that stage, sensations stop carrying the labels. So if you experience pain, your mind is not labeling it as a pain, even though you know it's an unpleasant sensation. You just feel sensation. It's a very intense sensation. And what's interesting is that when it's not labeled, you can just sit there with it. Like it doesn't matter how intense it is. Well, I'm sure that if a certain intensity comes, you might, it might nudge you, but it will take a lot more to move you. And I started feeling crazy knee pain. I'm talking like somebody was carving carving a knife in my knee, like that bad. Okay. But I've had this bunga in which I felt like it was just sensations. And the thing happened for however long, and maybe it was 30 minutes or so. And then it passed away, and I even forgot about it happening. And then I continued meditating. And then when I was done, I stepped outside. Hey Matt, how are you, everybody? And I couldn't believe it. And also, Biggie, Biggie Deluxe, I saw your comment. I'm gonna tell you guys where to go to do that in a moment. And I stepped outside from the hall, and I couldn't believe it. I felt like I was on straight up, full on acid. Like not a little bit. I don't mean like things were kind of cool. I mean full on. Like the colors were just, and the smells and everything was just pristine and everything was glistening. The air was shining. That's how crazy it was. And I was like, this is insane. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And also the mental clarity that accompanied that state, in which I understood all my nonsense and why I do certain things and how I constantly am my own worst enemy, and like why I'm doing these nonsense because I want the short-term reward and all that stuff. And I just saw it so clearly without any judgment, any fear. I could just see what I need to change, all that stuff. And that was in 4 hours. So I was like, okay, dude, this is insane. And I also realized that essentially it's just a bandwidth problem, because in order to keep your body alive, there has to be something conscious paying attention to every single function in your body, which means that as long as your heart is beating, there's a some part of your consciousness is beating that heart, even if you're not consciously doing it. So whatever your conscious experience is, it's just riding on top of a much larger conscious experience. And we can call it subconscious. It doesn't matter what you call it, but there's always some kind of an attention that is paying attention to it. Otherwise, it cannot be part of the living system. So I realized that whatever that thing in the knee was, whatever that was, it was probably attached to some kind of a very big trauma that happened to me when I was younger. And when it was in my body, so something had to be paying attention to it 24/7 to keep it alive. So when I allowed it to fully express itself, and then it just kind of goes away. It's almost like a child that wants attention. And then when you finally give it attention, let's say it's a very healthy child, and then it stops wanting attention, like the perfect child. It stops wanting attention. And then whatever attention was allocated to pay attention to this thing is now free to pay attention to colors and smells and thoughts. So you have so much more bandwidth to pay attention with. And then in that moment I realized immediately, this is real. This is very big. And that's when I knew that I had to keep doing this. And actually I didn't go for no, actually that's not true. I went to do I served. You can also serve after you do the first sit. You can go and volunteer. You can volunteer in one of the courses, like work in the kitchen or whatever you want to do. So I did one of these the same year, and then after that I didn't go for like 2 years. And then they try and encourage you to meditate 2 hours a day, 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour in the evening, and maintain that for a year. Which, by the way, after you do a retreat, imagine that you do 11 hours a day every day for 10 days. 2 hours is like a layup. Like it's not even doing an hour now. Like if I have to sit for an hour, that's not even a problem. After a retreat, that's no problem. You can just sit there, which is kind of crazy if you think about it. Because if I asked myself right before the retreat, because I fell off that wagon and I wasn't doing it on a regular basis. If you don't do it on a regular basis, it's so difficult to all of a sudden sit for an hour without something interrupting you. But now, no problem. So yeah, so I highly recommend this to. Doesn't matter what you believe, doesn't matter what even if you think that you're very far down your spiritual path and you have your own way, no problem. Know that this is the original thing, what the Buddha taught, and it's always good to have that in the as a baseline, because that's just like going to the gym, just like everything else. That's an actual ability of being able to hold your attention in a certain way and be able to, see what in fact is going on when you're going through your day and you're going through all your emotions. To your questions, Big Deluxe, these retreats are everywhere in the world. And there are many, many books that can explain this. I mean, it's the entirety of, all the different Buddhist sects, but specifically this practice is Vipassana, which is a form of mindfulness meditation. And Vipassana specifically, it is the purest form of meditation that is the closest to how the Buddha taught it without all the metaphysics. So it's just literally the practice itself. And I mentioned this in this conversation, but I'll say it again a few times so people can sign up. You can go to Google right now and just type in Vipassana, 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 and you just type in New York or Massachusetts or whatever, wherever you are, and it will show you the closest center. And they're all free. They're donation based only. You can donate whatever you want at the end. You don't have to if you don't have money. It's fine. You show up, you do the practice. Great accommodation, great food, and so highly recommend this for everybody to try. What's up, Matt? Let's see if we have some of the comments. We able to release what you wait. Were you able to release what you needed? Does that include physical ailments? Yes. So surprisingly, this was actually one of my earlier in this conversation. I think it was Cal that asked me what was one of my biggest insights. One of my biggest insights in this particular retreat was I'm very skeptical by nature. So even though I love the practice and I do it, I'm always reserving the right to also have my own kind of interpretation of it. And I was not fully sold because according to Vipassana, we are all just a collection of vibrations. And again, I know a lot of people, especially from the people in my audience, that you guys subscribe to this idea, but to me it's not that obvious. There's a lot of different ways to look at it, right? And under this understanding, according to Vipassana, even when you sit for an hour, it gets uncomfortable. Like your back hurts, your knee hurts, whatever, right? So according to Vipassana, all of these things, all of them, even the ones that you think they're just, no, that's chronic pain, like that's, I just had it forever, and I know that the other things are like that, but this is just my pain, right? According to Vipassana, that's not true. According to Vipassana, that even the pain in your knee, not kind of like the pain in the knee that I was describing, but just a regular pain in the knee when you just sit too long in one position, even that is some form of, they call it sankhara, which is a form of attachment of the mind to matter, which is, and there's different levels of sankhara. So this is just a type of one of these attachments to matter. And what's behind that teaching is that if you allow that pain to also express itself, and it might take months, by the way, but eventually it will also go away and not happen again. And I wasn't fully sold on that. But this time, there's a particular kind of ache that I get that is in between my gluteus minimus, which is like that muscle, on the side right here, that I always get like a lot of tension in. And people would say, well, you should stretch it and all that stuff. Okay, I know, yeah. But that when you sit for hours, it gets really achy for me. And this time I was really focusing on it, and it went away. Like it didn't exist. It's not like it went away for an hour and then came back. No, like it was clear to me that it fully expressed itself. It was gone. So now I know for a fact that it's just a matter of time before, if you focus enough on these things, they will eventually express themselves fully. And to your question, I have no reason to doubt that even physical ailments and even serious conditions can probably be fully expressed this way. That being said, I obviously still recommend to always consult a doctor, because certain things, they might kill you faster than you'll be able to meditate them away. Okay, even if you use this frame. So that's to that question. I hear people talking about thinking of nothing as meditation. That's not how I do it, though. So anybody who so again, I can tell you that you can, on the one hand, you can say to each his own, and maybe people have different experiences. But as far as I understand the human mind, and by the way, the Buddha himself said that, it is literally impossible. I'm going to repeat, impossible to not have thoughts, because you're not thinking them. It's your mind, and that's what your mind does. So you can quiet the mind enough where there's less thoughts, but there's definitely no situation, and that's, according to me, that's according to the big kahuna, to the Buddha, you can never stop your mind from thinking thoughts. I think that if somebody thinks that, they're probably confused, or they don't realize that the amount of thoughts they have is so dense, they don't even realize that they're thinking about the fact. It's almost like they're thinking they're not thinking. That's how dense their thoughts are. And that happens very often, actually. So if somebody goes to a first retreat and they tell you, oh, I managed to not think for 30 minutes, there is no way that happened. There's just no way. There's no, there's just no way, because they live in the modern world. You can maybe 30 seconds at best. Okay. And then slowly you kind of learn to hold it for like a minute, and then a minute and a half. But the point is not to not have thoughts. The point is to move your attention consciously to what you choose. So the thoughts will happen, but then, and they're all attached to some kind of a physical sensation that you don't necessarily know what's what. But if you can focus enough on just the bodily sensations, so the decoupling from the label starts, which is like, oh, I have a pain in my shoulder, becomes, oh, I have this particular type of pull and tension in my shoulder, and you're not even analyzing, you're just feeling it, you're going through it, and you move on, and before your mind can really focus and get lost, you move on to different parts of the body. And if you can do that, then stop thinking it's never really the goal. Now, I want to say that there's obviously different types of meditation. The only thing that is in common to, I guess you can say, all meditation is that they're all forms of using your attention to achieve a particular goal. So, for example, with TM, Transcendental Meditation, and obviously, yes, baby. Somebody needs to go for a walk over here. And for example, with the transcendental meditation, one of the, and obviously this is like a caricature version of, I know it's much more than that, but one of the biggest emphasize is to calm the mind. In Vipassana, there is no goal of calming the mind. Vipassana, the main goal is to purify the mind, to achieve full liberation and full, like, get to nirvana, essentially. And we can talk about what that means. But it is, the goal is the final goal, essentially. And along the way, there are other techniques like anapana, which is, for example, paying attention to the breath, which is, by the way, not breath work, because you're not controlling your breath. You're just paying attention to the breath. That's it. And the goal of that is to sharpen the mind and to some degree calm the mind. So, for example, if you, a mantra meditation is known to be able to calm the mind pretty well. So, for example, if you focus on the breath and then you count, if you go 1, 2, just by the fact that you're counting, so you engage a particular portion of the mind that actually calms you down. Okay, so that's one type of attentional attempt to do a particular thing. With anapana, the idea is to reach a state of neutrality and focus. So so literally, if you do the same thing and you go, but you only pay attention to the way the air moves between the nostrils, and you're not counting, it achieves something else. It actually makes it more easier to focus, and it sharpens your mind. And also, what's interesting about this kind of practice is that because you're not trying to control your breath, the breath is the one object that, to use a poetic language, it's the one object that is both yours and God's, in a sense, because you can breathe consciously. You can choose to breathe harder, right? Or if you have some kind of a physical sensations that involve excitement. So if you get scared or if you get excited, you get heavier breathing, right? So the breathing changes according to what your physical state is doing. But if you fully calm down, then the breath becomes very, 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 very delicate. And if you still can pay attention to it slowly, you start seeing something else. It's almost like now you feel how God is breathing or nature is breathing through you, because it's like automatic. So there's something about that function that becomes, and that is one of these connections. So this I just gave you 3 different types of meditations, and they're all made for something else. Vipassana specifically made to eventually get to a point where you dissolve any kind of, when you get to this point where you completely dissolve everything in the body as far as your physical attachment to it, and even you don't get attached to the pleasant sensations, and you don't try and push away the ones that don't feel good, because you can be practicing for 20 years and you will still get pretty deep pain sometimes, because there's a lot that the human experience brings on you, right? And eventually the goal is to get to what's called full liberation, which means that you don't just dissolve all the physical sensation and attachment to it, but you dissolve any attachment to any potential kind of interaction with even the conceptual framework and everything. And you reach a state that is basically permanent, which is called full liberation. I think Arahan is the title that is given to somebody who's like fully liberated, which, by the way, is not enlightened yet. Apparently there's levels, but you're already in a state where that's it. It's all like you're permanently there. You don't have to sleep. You can, because you can just sit and pay attention, and because the reason for sleep is because you have to shut it down because your mind is so active, right? But if you're in that state of full liberation, you don't have to sleep at all, according to the claim. And then from there, this is where the Buddha kind of decided one day, okay, I'm just going to sit under this tree, and I'm going to do a strong determination sit where I'm not going to move until I reach full enlightenment. That was the decision, strong determination. And he said, even if I'm going to sit here till I completely die from starvation and my bones are going to start cracking, even if it happens while I'm still alive, I'm not going to move until I'm fully enlightened. That was the decision. And I don't remember how long it took him, but literally that's where he reached that final stage where he essentially achieved nirvana, which is, I guess the easiest way to define it is you become outside of any possible happening ever, because according to the belief according to Buddhism in general, is that these sankharas, these attachments, they're cyclical, and then they also are the things that propel you to the next moment. So the reason that we are in space and time is because we have attachment to matter to some degrees, and then every moment we reborn again into this space, and eventually when your physical body dies, whatever state your mind occupies in that second. So if you're a miserable person and there's a lot of misery, all that sankara of this flavor, your body dies, but the soul is eternal. So that sankara propels you to the next life, and that's exactly the signature that the next life is going to have. So if you were a miserable person and what your state of mind with the last second was misery, that's what your next life is going to look like, because it's just right. So the idea behind meditation, that even if you don't achieve full enlightenment in this lifetime or next lifetime, you get closer and closer, that every time you die, the moment of your death is a much more balanced place, because your mind is much in a better place. So then the next life is even better, the next life is even better, and now you're spiraling up essentially. So that's the idea behind like full enlightenment, right? And then full enlightenment means that there's no more attachment at all. Like there's no sankaras of any kind, not possible. In that place, you essentially, when you reach to the end of this life, there's nothing to propel you to the next life. So you stop reincarnating, and you're just outside of space and time. That's it. You're just nirvana. You're outside. And I mean, I guess that's the super short version of what the Buddha taught. And then there's obviously overlaid a lot of over time, people overlaid a lot of mysticism around it. What's interesting is that the Buddha never once, not once, gave a metaphysical sermon. I never know how to pronounce that word. He never gave like a teaching that was of the metaphysical flavor. Never. He never talked about afterlife. He never spoke about other realms. He never spoke about any of these things ever. He never uttered a word on this subject. Everything we believe from Buddhism is basically all the different sects through India and the Far East that overlaid their own belief systems on top of what the Buddha taught, the enlightened one. And there were many, many Buddhas, by the way, as I'm sure you guys probably know, but the Buddha is a title. It's not a name of a person. And there were many Buddhas, but the Buddha we're talking about, the Buddha, he introduced this understanding that just getting to a place where you're very neutral is not enough to get to full liberation and to enlightenment. You actually have to sever any connection with any possible attachment to everything, including the mind. Okay, let's see if we have some more questions here. I'm sorry you're so smart. I feel not even worthy to engage. Oh my god, are you kidding me? Biggie Deluxe, don't ever say that again, man. Or I'm assuming you're a guy, but I'm sorry if you're not. I don't mean to offend. And I don't think anything that is worth expressing is worth expressing in a way that somebody can't engage with. But I appreciate the comment. Stagnancy. And by the way, Ava, your energy field is very clear. I appreciate that. I feel that. It's kind of crazy after a retreat how clean you feel. Let's see how long it lasts, right? You guys are going to be the judges. Ava, you're responsible for notifying me however long from now that you see that my energy field is getting a little wonky again. So I would appreciate that. But I'll try and maintain. The longest I maintained my 2 hours a day after a retreat was, I forget. I think it was 5 or 6 months. I'm gonna try and go a full year now. It's so difficult because sometimes, like, it's when you think you got it is when the biggest danger begins. Because when you think you got it, like you do it every day, then you're like, well, I'm doing it every day. Okay, like today, I don't know, I had to go see my nephews. Whatever, I'll skip an hour, and here we go. Now you start, basically falling off. Let's see. I'm just going back for a second. Thank you for your explanation. That is so interesting. I looked it up when you spoke it before. Oh, great. Yeah, please go. Highly recommended. What what is it called again? I'm in Massachusetts. So just so you know, wait, Massachusetts or I think it's Connecticut or Massachusetts, by the way, Kay. Oh no, I think it's Connecticut, but I'm not sure. It's the biggest center in the United States, Vipassana. Oh, there you go. Yeah, Rico said perfect. Um, let's see what else. Have you tried the Monroe Institute's Gateway experience? The goal is astral projection. Yeah, I did. How do you personally connect nirvana to the simulation theory? Great question, Cal. So first, let me say, Debbie, that yeah, I did try the Gateway experience. I have to say that it is very interesting. There's quite a bit of interesting things happening. You guys should try it for yourselves. You can just YouTube it. It's free. I think there's like 42 audio tapes or whatever. And definitely some interesting things happening when you do that. But I guess to connect it to also Cal's question, which is how do I connect nirvana to the simulation theory, and I guess to also connect it to what you're asking about, Debbie. I think that if I have to place my guess, the simulations are running in this computational matrix, right? That is this. You can think of it like God is running these infinite computational systems to figure something out, including how to stop, uh, you know, remember, like how to be okay with the fact that there's nothing aside from me. Like imagine, yeah, I was talking about this the other day with a friend of mine about this insight where if you actually imagine what it's like to be this being that is just all eternal, and imagine that you also know that there's nothing outside of you, that never was and there never will be. You're essentially the only thing that exists. And I guess the first impulse probably is like, what? Why? What this is, like if you actually try to place yourself, it's so crazy. It's like essentially solipsism, right? But then you're like, dude, like it's so. First of all, it's a gutting feeling. It's like it's the deepest loneliness you can possibly feel, right? Not to talk about like imprisonment, right? And I guess from that perspective, it would make sense why God doesn't want to remember that He is all there is. Um, which, by the way, food for thought for people who are saying we should wake up and remember we're one. Maybe God doesn't want to remember we're all one, because from that state it's just like crazy lonely, and maybe that's why God completely broke himself or herself or itself into these different parts, so it doesn't have to remember that, so it doesn't feel lonely. However, of course, that this kind of entertainment is just a perspective of a very simple mind that is trying to project itself into an infinite state, which is of course impossible. So who knows what the real state of mind of God, right? But at least in this context, I always say we always want compassion from God, but we never think, do we have compassion for God? Do we have compassion for this kind of state? And trying to understand, like, there's so many things there that kind of arise as questions that, all of a sudden it makes some sense from the sentiment of the God of the Old Testament that says, only believe in me. Like the God wants the attention because literally it's all he has, like, as far as like, like who knows, right? But all of that being said, I do think that the other ability that I would try and perfect if I would be in that state, and it might be that it is actually the truth about what we are ultimately, I would try and perfect the ability to just what we do in Vipassana, to just sit and be in bliss. And the way I see Nirvana, Cal, is essentially God trying to reach this stage through. So if you would just try and do it from this one unitary perspective, it would be a torture, because you literally, until you get there, you like this one thing that is trying and failing, Vipassana forever, right? But if you break yourself to different parts, some parts can still play the game of separation and do whatever and enjoy the nonsense and the craziness, while other parts learning how to meditate and to achieve nirvana. And then when these achieve nirvana, okay, now so at least a big portion of God already achieved nirvana, and now other parts, it's their time to try and achieve nirvana. And then essentially, eventually, God just becomes fully enlightened, which is a weird term to use because we think of God already enlightened. But who knows? Like, who knows what it just makes sense to me that this would not be all in vain. Like this idea that Christians have about everything is already known and written. Then what's the point of it? What is the point of something that is all known, right? I think there has to be some function that is served by our existence exactly how we are, and it might have levels, and we share responsibility and all that stuff. But ultimately, you have to, you know, accept that it has to be especially if it's a plan like the divine plan. The plan has a goal. It's not just for nothing, right? How you doing, Matthew? How are you, brother? Yeah, so that's on that front. And the simulation would be just the infinite simulations God runs in order to, on the one hand, try and maybe figure out why everything exists, and on the other hand, also practice how to not care, or to just be and be in love and just be love. Um, Simulation theory used to feel godless to me. Now I've merged the two and changed my perspective on. Oh, yeah, great. In fact, Ava, I don't know if you know this, but in every religion, there's the sect of that religion that is kind of like the mystical school, right? So in Christianity, you have I forget what it's called. I think it's School of Light. I forget what it's called, but there's a few sects in Christianity that kind of like are more the mystical sect. Uh, um, in Islam, you have the Sufism, right? And in Judaism, you have the Kabbalah, the Zohar, right? And in the Kabbalah, there's a lot of elements that are very close to what the simulation theory essentially is, and that it really is. The proximity to the subject matter is uncanny. It's like very, very close. But I agree with you that the tone of what we believe about the simulation in the modern world is much more technical, maybe heartless. And so it can appear as that. And I definitely agree that in order to bring ourselves to a healthier state, we should frame things in ways that also feel good and feel correct, and feel more holy versus technological, even if they are expressed in a technological way. If it feels lonely, that feels like falsehood to me, as that sits in separation. So you see, I will challenge you on that, Ava, because if you think about it, the idea that we should be good to each other because we're one, it's almost like it's like a it's like you're trying to cajole a child to do the right thing. It's like, look, if you're gonna take his cubes, you're actually taking your own cubes. So actually, I'm not really teaching you to be better towards like better just in general. I'm teaching you that, look, it's you. This is why you should be good, because it's actually you. So that's actually not a good enough reason. It's actually much, I guess, a higher level to be good to someone else versus to be good to yourself. And not because it's you, because when it's someone else, it's communion. To get to communion, it feels much more pure to me, actually. So I'm not saying that one or the other is correct. I'm just saying that there's always a different way to look at it. But I don't think that the seed of why we want to aspire to be more divine is because we're one. That's not the reason at all. And in fact, again, um, you have to entertain that there's obviously a lot we don't understand. And especially from the perspective of spirituality, where we don't really have these concrete ways of measuring things, we have to be maybe a little bit more open-minded and open heart to the possibility that maybe we're not that clear on what God wants, right? I'm not saying I know. I'm just saying maybe we should be a little easier on the gas pedal there, and maybe try and like really understand what might be the case. So yeah, for me, it never made sense that because we're one, we should be good to each other. It's kind of like, so what? So how many people are self-destructive and they hate themselves? Just, you're one, but you hate yourself. So what? And I understand the sentiment that, we think of God as the perfect being. So how can God possibly have these qualities? Well, if God is perfect or almost perfect, God would contain all of these emotions on steroids, right? So God's anger would be anger that you can't even comprehend, right? Even the dark emotions, which is all the stuff, um, and that would apply to everything else. And in fact, I think it actually creates a much for me. It creates a much um, better and a much more open channel towards what God really is to me personally, because it makes it not unreachable. Because if I think of God only as this like ultimate object that don't worry about God, it's like just like you know it almost severs my need for my relationship with him. I was like, okay, well, I don't want to be under a guy who's just threatening me with hell. That's not a God that I want to have any kind of relationship with, right? Because why I should be good because I'm scared. That's not a good reason. I want to be good because I want to be good, right? Or do the right thing, or what feels holy, what feels right. But I do want to create a relationship with a God that I have a two-way street with, that I'm playing some kind of a role that contributes to the whole picture. And in that sense, I think it's important to consider all possibilities if they come natural and they don't come out of a place of uh, trying to overlay some kind of a personal worldview to for some kind of a personal gain. Like if you speaking a certain way to get a certain group of people to follow you, just to get, I don't know, to get money or to get whatever. Okay, that would be a bad reason as to try and do anything. But if you speak out of a place that feels right, that's all you can do in the moment. And what I'm saying now sounds very like I can at least see that there can be a possibility that all of these things are part of what we are, and the way we express ourselves. There's an element of that up there. That's why we can entertain it, because there's a version, whatever we express, no matter how low we consider ourselves to be, there is some seed in what we do, or there is some seed in God that gives rise to this thing that we do. You see what I'm trying to say? Um, about this before. He created matter. What did he create in the other realms? Well, Lizzie, as far as the question was, before he created matter, what did he create in other realms? Well, it really depends on what you mean. Matter ultimately is just a way we call our current world, where we can measure things and we can't walk through walls and all that stuff. But actually, if the world is primarily informational, so like computational, then other realms, they're just different arrangements of the rules. That's all they are. And you can have worlds in which, I don't know, you can walk through pink walls. Why? That's the rules. That's one of the laws of physics, right? And so in that context, your question can just be formulated to the original question is, what truly gave rise to the initial state, which is God himself? And I think that is the question on God's mind as well. I personally think. Uh, God's anger would be biblical, quite literally. Where do you think God consciousness came from? Probably Los Angeles. No, um, I don't know. I have no idea. It's the what's the biggest number? The gram number dollars question. Open to that. I was viewing the other perspective. Wait, let me go back. See, we have a few contexts. How are you, Torre non Max? You know that because I have dyslexia, your handle is like the hardest thing for me to read. Let's try again. Torretron Max. Torretron Max. That's cool. Wouldn't that be premise of? Wait, let me see. Okay. Wouldn't that be the premise of free will versus destiny? Um, Let's reserve the free will conversation. Spoke about free will before. Let's reserve that conversation for maybe tomorrow's episode or the day after. I promise to talk about it more. I feel like it's a very large subject, and if you show up tomorrow or the next day, Eva, feel free to remind me. I would love to touch on the subject of free will versus destiny a little deeper. But I feel like it's gonna take us into another rabbit hole that I'm not sure we have enough time for today. Have you read Tom Campbell's Theory of Everything? Yeah, I think it's very close to. I have a friend that was actually here on the chat the other day, and he said he interacted with Thomas, and he might try and connect us to see what's going on. And how are you to Retromax? Do you 100% Matthew is asking, do you 100% believe we are in a simulation, or are you just pretty sure? I am 100% sure. Yes. However, what I would add to that is that what we mean by the word simulation needs a deeper examination, and because it's just a computationally rendered environment, that's all it means. And if the world is computational as a whole, if God is what, and when I say computational, we think of computers as this technical thing on the side with wires and electricity and all that stuff. But what computation itself is it's the abstraction itself. It's not the computer computes, so it instantiates the function of computation in the physical world. But computation itself is not physical. It is a function that is possible in the physical world. You see the difference? So if the world is computational at bottom, what I mean by that, it's not that the world is behind the scenes, it's all wires and microchips. Is that the world behind the scenes is a computational function of a sort that can be extrapolated forever. And if the world is computational, then the word simulation simply means a slice of reality. So in that sense, you can call it parallel worlds or parallel realities, and it would be exactly the same. Hermetics is very interesting for sure. Have you read any of the documents released on DPI by Dr. Stephen Greer with aliens? I'm sorry, guys. Again, the more I enter the space, I'm trying to be as respectful as possible to as many belief systems as possible. But I have to tell you, and this is, you can hold me accountable for saying this, but I do like, as far as vibes are concerned, I have to say that Greer rubs me off as a con artist. There's everything about him just feels wrong to me. And I've heard him speak a handful of times, but I can't. There's something there that is like it's off for me. And by the way, fully aware that I can be absolutely wrong, and he can be the nicest guy, and or by the way, he can still be a nice guy regardless. But he can even not be any of that, and it's just I'm overlaying. But I have to be honest about that because there's certain energies that they guide certain narratives. And when you are spending so many decades talking about a particular thing and you never land on anything concrete, which is the case with Greer, um, I think something there is not quite right. Um, did you ever think about the possibility of holy yak? Can you? Oh, holy yak is an interesting animal, by the way. It's, I don't know if you know, but it mostly herds around Alpha Centauri. Holy tech, yeah. It's actually one of the things that I always rave about, which I believe that humanity should not uh, try and eliminate the idea of technology and think that technology is evil, because it isn't. It's just a tool that is taking the shape of what we are. And if we are confused and crazy, then the technology we're going to create is going to be confused and crazy. But if we are inspired by the divine, we can create holy technology 100%. And I'm not sure that's what you meant by that, but you can always tell me if I got it wrong. I was viewing from another perspective where fear comes from separation, and how fear is a falsehood. Well, it depends what you mean by falsehood. And also, don't forget that separation is a layer of emergence that exists. So it's maybe you heard me make this example before, but to say that potatoes and fries are the same thing is not exactly true. They're different levels of emergence of the same thing, but they're not the same thing. They taste different. They have a different texture. At the point that the potato is French fries, it doesn't taste like a regular potato, right? So the experience of potato in that moment is different. So the fact that separation exists, the fact that fear exists, it has a reason, right? So like in this moment, even if later we're going to discover again that we're God and we're going to, remember that we're all one and all of that stuff, there was a moment in time right now that for a lot of us, fear was real, separation felt real, and that was also part of what existed. So the fact that there is some ultimate state at the end of time in which we forget that we were separate, or we remember that we're all one, does not nullify the importance and the every moment in time is probably holy if it's all part of God, right? So from everything that happened as it was experienced by all conscious beings ever has to be counted, and has to be counted for what they were in that time. So if I feel separate from you right now, that is a moment in time that happened. So in that sense, it's, to me personally, it sounds a little missing the mark. Where saying ultimately it's an illusion. Okay, but right now it's not. Right now it feels real. And right now, if I fall off a building and I survive, but I fall face first and destroy my face, that's not a fun existence from that point. Maybe I'll reach a point, and if I work on myself and I'm like accepted and everything, okay, I can still be in bliss, but I can have a few rough years. You know what I mean? And I think that should also be taken into account. Happiness doesn't come to you, you don't find it, it's a state of being. Yes, I agree with that. What do you think God, oh, we read that, God's anger would be biblical, that was hilarious. What if you don't see God with human like emotions? Well, yeah, I'm sure that his emotions are not human like, but I'm saying that if, especially if you believe that we are God, or we are an expression of God to some degree, we are a little fraction of God. So whatever we have cannot be completely alien to God, right? It's true that all the ultimate emotions, infinite emotions, will be very different than anything we can ever imagine from a limited mind that we have. But it has some kind of an element that is of God, which means that whatever this, including the very human negative emotions like anger and fear and all that stuff, these things, they arise, if, again, especially if you believe that we're part of God or we are God, they arise from some kind of a thing that exists in, they exist in God as well. That's what I'm trying to say. Whose stack do you think is better, Mint stack or the Ancient of Days stack? uh that's a very interesting question. Everyone please look into it. Yeah, I think that it's possible that some ancient civilizations figured something out through the certain uses of their minds, or things like that. But I do think that it definitely is. It became a slightly virtue signaling meme to insist that the ancients knew it better and we forgot, and now we got to remember what they remembered. I think that we figured out things that the ancients had no idea about in some ways, and maybe we forgot some other things in other ways. It's possible. But I definitely think that as far as being physically comfortable, I definitely think we have the best of all times. Now, if we can just bring it back to also enjoy everything we have without constantly like getting bored with it, yeah, that would definitely be a better world. So, but you can't, if I have to be honest about my impression of it, I think that it's almost like it's not fair to compare that, because it's not like people who lived simpler lives had the wisdom of being more calm, and no, they just had literally less things to pay attention to. They didn't know any better. If you would give them iPhones, they would immediately go into the iPhones. It's not like they were wiser, they just didn't have any options, that's all. So, and it kind of goes to the same argument when people say, well, nature only goes to the boundaries of balance and doesn't overstep the boundaries. Well, no. If lions could, they would take over the world. They just don't know how. It's really it's almost like saying, look, the pool is contained exactly in the parameters you gave it, and the water is not trying to spill out. Yeah, it's because it can't. If you give it a tilt, the water will definitely flow out. So I think it's easy to exaggerate these things, but I am not ruling out the possibility that there's a lot more, that because the humans back then had more mind to pay attention to less things, I'm certain that there were things that they could understand about certain crafts, about, even about maybe more advanced technologies. I'm a little iffy about that, to be honest, but I'm open to it. But I do think that we shouldn't sell ourselves so short. I do think that humans overall are pretty awesome, and I do like the good part of humanity now. I think that we shouldn't see ourselves as a problem. I think we're just a very powerful tool, and we should embrace that and live the best version of ourselves. Um, let's see. I think he does, but he's been around so long, he's worked his issues. There are things in the world that are otherworldly. I like that. Let's go back a little bit more. Math is the shit. Greer is plan. Oh, wait. Let me go back a little bit. Walks Island. Let me see. That is. Thank you, Lord. We have a lot of comments. Okay, let's see. Somebody wrote down LA. God kid from LA. There are things in the world that are unworldly. That's great. Touretron Max. Touretron Max. I'm gonna take a snapshot of this and practice how to say it. Thank you. What does that mean, by the way? I never thought he did, but it's curious, and I appreciate your perspective. Okay, thank you. Did you look up the ops March Madness 1 2 3? No, I have not. Can you specify a little bit more? It's a little cryptic for me. Just trying to wrap my head around God feeling lonely when he could simultaneously be alone and with all. Yeah, because you would like to believe that God can just create anything, so God can create infinite entertainment. But at the same time, God is infinite. Again, we're playing a very loose game here, right? Because we don't know the real parameters. But let's play that game. But if you want to postulate infinity to his ability of creation, you have to allow for the possibility of also experiencing everything at once. So it becomes meaningless. And then if you can do everything, there's no price to anything. It's just completely meaningless. And then the fact that you're also alone, literally alone. And I think that what is the horizon that it's hard for us to see beyond is that we cannot actually imagine a state in which there's nothing outside of us. We know there's a world, or at least that's what we perceive, and there's other people, and even if they treat us like shit, at least it's somebody else who's treating us like shit, so we're not alone, right? So that feeling of being completely alone and knowing it, I don't think we can really fathom that. And if even there's the remote possibility that that's the case, I think we should have a little bit of compassion for God in that sense. I feel like the grace of God is that you get to go to sleep. Creating destiny of the region as well. I just can't get why we are here. Drives me crazy. Yeah, well, see, also part of God probably. How does this explanation change when you don't see God having human emotions? Wait. How does this explanation change when you don't see God having human emotions? He would have a lot more emotions, and he would have some forms of emotions that mimic ours, that match the size and the both in temporal terms and in spatial terms. Or maybe I just don't understand your question. If you want to specify it better, Abel, or again, so I can understand. Hundreds of others too around the globe. It'll be on the news in days. All the scummy is gone. Thank you, Lord. Sounds biblical. I feel like the existence of math kind of proves the simulation theory. Not sure specifically why. I know what you're alluding to. Greer is a plan, but dare to complete triple cross. Yeah, Tetramax. I appreciate you, man, but it's cryptic for me, and maybe I'm too zoned out right now. But I'm not following you. Math is the shit. By the way, that's a great T-shirt. Math is the shit. I used to enjoy having math homework. I love math too. Creating, and with my accent, it's very easy to slide into "I love meth," which is very easy to say from being and confuse a lot of people. Creating destiny, their maths is a lie. Well, damn. How can a person who is love not have emotions? Yeah, I suppose you could say believe God could encompass all emotions, but is not of them. But then are the emotions outside of God? What's with the hordes of people who struggle with adihidonia? I'm not sure I spelled that right. Yeah, I think that concept is foreign to me. Adihidonia. Let's see what that is. 1 second. Let me see. Let's see. Okay. What is adihidonia? Let's see. Let's see if it tells us. It's used in psychology, psychiatry to describe that inability to experience pleasure from activities that are typically found enjoyable. This condition is often associated with mental health disorders such as depression, schizophrenia, and other mood disorders. People with anhedonia may lose interest in hobbies, social activities, and even daily routines once brought them joy. How is this different than depression? I wonder. I don't know why it has this separate term. Interesting. I don't know. Well, yes, every experience is valid. We could view it as universal truth versus objective truth. By the way, I'm just inquiring and curious and appreciate the convo, not trying to be. Oh, not at all. I don't take it as argumentative, Ava. I love this stuff. I do. I will say, however, that especially after a Vipassana retreat, one element of these, discussions become more clear, which is that uh, all of the stuff that we're doing here, which I deeply appreciate, and I'm obviously going to keep doing it, but ultimately you want to anchor it into something that is functional in terms of a practice of some sort that brings you closer to a peaceful state, bothered by anything. You're just there, and that is something that's very important. A lot of these things are intellectual entertainment, which I absolutely love, but ultimately it has to be tied to some kind of, I guess, a wisdom, something that experientially you can see that it is either true or not. I don't know if in our lifetime we're ever going to be able to see, or feel what God feels. But if we do, then that might also be relevant. Who knows? Members of the body, ancient. It's funny how TikTok has this thing where you just kind of go down a little bit and then just jumps all the way to the bottom. Live the best version of ourselves. Guess that's what it's all about. Yeah, I agree. Everything feels meaningless. This is oh, I see. Oh, it's your struggle. Yeah, we're gonna talk about it. Creating destiny. I'm gonna pick up this conversation and gonna see what we can potentially do to try and pull you out of that. If he told you everything is meaningless, would that change your life negatively? It's an interesting tilt. Like if you already think everything is meaningless, if I tell you everything is meaningless, will it change your life? Do you feel like you just got it before everybody else and it makes you feel better? I think we do this. I do sense his loneliness because even when surrounded by, we still feel alone sometimes. Hey Jeff James. I'm not sure. We'll see. Just Google March. Okay. No, I wouldn't because I genuinely feel that it's pointless anyway. That is so funny. I mean, it's not funny, but it is funny how circular that is. But don't worry, creating destiny. We're gonna have a conversation about this. Let's see what we can do there. Are you ever worried something wouldn't want you to expose the matrix simulation? I'm trying to always keep myself attuned to what is being said from the other side, and it's not always very clear. I do see that sometimes there's a disagreement on the subject, but I think ultimately I'm trying to listen to you know, all I can do is the best I can do from my perspective, and I also try to aim for the best. In the beginning, it was very clear that I really thought about it, and before I released the first video about it, I thought I kind of went into the space very often and asked, and it seemed like the response was sure, like this is a good thing. And I was like, okay, I released the video. It flowed very well. It opened a lot of interesting doors, not just in terms of like opportunity of interacting with interesting people, which is, I guess, for me. So in that sense, it's selfish, but also opened wonderful doors to interact with people that are uh, have incredible abilities to help people, and that connected me with a better part of myself. So even the personal growth part, so every stage might have a different thing to it, but all I can do is like, look, I'm speaking honestly and I'm listening to the other side. I don't want to be irresponsible. Like if there's a like if it's like clear cut, which so far I do get sometimes like an interaction that's like, wait, are you telling me I should stop talking about it? And then it's not clear, so I'm like, okay, well, if it's important, be clear. Like, because all I can do is, from what I understood, you already told me it's okay. So now I've been talking about this for like 3 years. If you're telling me that I shouldn't talk about this, first of all, be super clear, and also maybe help me understand a little bit more, like why. And if you can't, again, be super clear, because again, I don't want to be irresponsible in the sense of like, well, if I'm, if they see like 100% that if I keep talking about it, if we keep doing this thing, that is going to ruin like the whole thing. Of course, I don't want to do that. But if I'm being honest and authentic about what I'm saying, and I do know that I'm aiming towards less suffering for humans to the extent that I can see it, maybe framing it in terms that help people feel better about themselves and life and the world and all that stuff, then that's the best I can do. I can't. There's not much I can do beyond that. The fact that it's available, it's there to see. Okay, you know what I mean? Like it's there. Like, it, shouldn't it be completely undiscoverable if it's a secret? I don't know. That's kind of like where I sit. I'm not. It's not that I don't worry myself about it. Is that I'm trying to be attuned to the extent that I can, and I'm trying to be as honest as I can when I speak about this stuff, including stuff like that. Like I would just tell you exactly what my state of mind about it is. Um, let's see. Except I don't want to do anything or do involves with anyone except for my kids. No good. Well, actually, hold on. But if the kids give you, um, oh yeah, thank you, Lizzie. I appreciate it. By the way, creating destiny. If the kids are one of your doors to some meaning, that might be an important thing. Maybe just do more things with your kids and expand your horizons through the interaction with your kids. And maybe you're already doing that, but that's one hint. Also, there's a lot of sometimes some pharmacological intervention is not a dirty thing. Like, yes, ultimately you want to go as clean as possible, but listen, some people struggle through the entire life, and don't let anyone else judge you, because again, I'm not saying it's necessarily the case for you. You should definitely consult a professional, but I know people that literally struggled their whole lives, and their level of suffering for them is so unbearable that hearing all this advice on social media is like, oh, you just get up earlier in the morning, give it. Dude, they can't, literally can't, like they can't, you know not everybody has the same constituents inside, so give them a break. And then sometimes some antidepressants can be an answer, at least a partial answer, until you get yourself to a certain level. And it's not a bad thing. Like we should be allowed to explore whatever it is. I don't know if you try to take 5-HTP. There's, I know a lot of people were helped by Wellbutrin, but again, all of these things you're gonna have to get like a prescription from a professional, but they really help, right? Or help to a degree for a certain period of time, and then you can find a better solution. But at least you're not in this like very very deep state of agony. And Another thing that I know that they found, it's actually very heavily, so how they have omega 3s. So there are particular brands and types of omega 3s with was it HT, what is it, the thing, EPA, right? Yeah, high concentration of EPA. I'm gonna make sure we because I saw that you DM'd me, so I'm gonna text it to you. But essentially, you have to get one that says in the back that it has over 1,000 milligrams of EPA each pill. Okay, because they have different ones. There's some, they're not all the same. The omega 3s, they have some that like let's say have 350 milligrams of EPA in each pill. You need one that has at least 700 or over 1,000, because if you take two of them a day, so anywhere between 1 to 2 grams of EPA a day with omega 3s, clinically showed to be more effective very often than antidepressants after 10 days. After a week or 10 days, it starts literally reformulating your brain chemistry. And it's a completely natural supplement. You can just find it in Vitamin Shop. So that's another solution you can try and take. Some supplements like that can actually help when it gets really bad. A little bit of dark chocolate can really help. Like small tricks like that to get you to a certain level where you get to interact with the world on a level that is more excited, and then you can take it from there. And if the problem persists and it's like very serious, again, consulting a professional is not a bad thing. Wellbutrin can maybe be the answer for a little while. So a lot of things to explore, but we talk about that. Um, Creating destiny, nothing wrong with being with your kids. Enjoy it. Okay, let's take a few more, and then we'll adjourn for today. I want to spend some time with my better half. Creating destiny, nothing wrong with. Oh, okay, we read that. I'm enjoying the live too. Was excited to see you on. Yeah, great. I'm excited to have you. Ever see a movie called Altered States? Maybe I don't remember. Just worried about the Smiths. What would people do when they realize they chose the wrong side? They would ignore it 100%. So, do you think that God would actually have sides? I used to be on antidepressants. I keep teetering back and forth about it. Thank you for your support. Absolutely. What about omega 3s and minerals a bit? Yeah, I tried it. The omega 3s really work, but it has to have that high concentration of EPA or it will not work. Super important. EPA. I'm pretty sure that, well, hold on. I have it here. So, this this brand is great, but you can get any brand. But this one is by Vitamin Shop. Okay, not a paid advertisement. That these are great because they have here it is. Each pill has 735 EPA. So if you have something like this and you take 2 or 3 of these a day, uh, it because what they explain is that people with traumas, at least 2 or 3 major traumas in their lives, something happens to the system that transforms um, serotonin, and instead of the prerequisite for serotonin, the pre-molecule of serotonin, it what happens is that your body produces the right before the serotonin. I forget what it's called, and the system messes it up, and instead of producing serotonin, it produces cortisol, so it produces stress, and then literally every enjoyable thing you do, it becomes like a stressful situation. So what this does, this is what research showed, it resets that system in the brain. Not immediately, but about after a week of this, a week or 10 days, which is a very short period, by the way. And then it's supposed to reset it, and it actually helps you to have a healthier relationship with activities. So try it. It's probably the cheapest thing you can try. All right. Yeah, seen the movie Limitless. Acid felt like the Limitless pill to me. Some people need liquid vitamins. Yeah. DHA as well. DHA is also important, but EPA I think is the thing that actually showed the big change. And you know what? I would make sure because I might be wrong. It might have been DHA that was in the research, but I think it was EPA. To be sure, what you can do, Google, YouTube. What's his face? Huberman, the Huberman Lab podcast, depression. He has a whole episode about depression, and in that episode, he goes deep, deep, deep into the research, and he explains about the omega 3s. So there, you're definitely going to get the right information, even if I made a mistake. So thank you for pointing it out. So again, the Huberman Lab podcast, depression. That's what you want to YouTube. Clear God's side, and obviously the better choice. I've seen it. Very interesting movie. Got to respect their choice though. Okay, let's see. Good. 2 years ago, my whole life has changed. I got my own company now, taking over the industry. Got a channel clicking. Okay. All right, guys. Well, listen, this was a good first stream after 10 days of silence. I'm gonna go back to doing this daily, and Ava is responsible to tell me when I'm starting to lose the clarity of my energy. Thank you for that comment. Do you have a video explaining that so I can send to my brother? Are you talking to me or are you talking to Retro Max? Is- thing. Uh, Christian, who are you asking? And also, if you're asking me, then video explaining what specifically? And absolutely, MEF. Yeah, YouTube is also in the house. The video of Omega 3. Oh yeah. Again, go to YouTube, type in uh, the Huberman Lab podcast. Andrew is his first name, right? The Huberman. Anyways, it's a big podcast. You'll find it right away. The Huberman Lab podcast, depression. He has an episode about different things. He's a neuroscientist and he breaks down all these like newest research and stuff. That's where I saw it, and I tried it, and I can tell you it works because I also have I struggle with clinical depression in my life, so I know. Um, Absolutely, Christian. So, guys, much love, everybody, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace and love, everybody. Bye, MEF, and whomever else is here on YouTube. Have a good night. See you tomorrow.